Hi, Steve.
Hey, Jim.
So between the two songs, I'm curious here. What do you think is the better one? The Who, My Generation, I Hope I Die Before I Get Old, or Jethro Tull, Too Old to Rock and Roll, Too Young to Die?
What was the question again?
And welcome once again to Two Guys Talking About Records, a vinyl community podcast, where each week we two guys talk about records to the vinyl community.
Yes. What a concept.
And it's a podcast.
Yes.
My name's Jim, and I am a record store owner.
And I'm Steve, a record collector.
How's it going today, sir?
I think it's going okay. Christmas decorations are up. We're festive outside. Now,
there we are. No snow on the ground here yet in the mid-Michigan area. Yet, being the operative word. Up north, they got some.
Okay. Yeah, it's coming.
But we're barreling toward Thanksgiving coming up, as of the recording of this next week. When you're listening to this week. But it's getting here fast.
That means Record Store Day.
Record Store Day, Black Friday, indeed, is coming. I'm still trying to gauge the excitement level for folks on this one. I don't think it's quite where they've been in the past. How's that?
I would agree. I think it's just, first off, the Swifties aren't involved, so the phone's not ringing off the hook right now.
I'm going to interrupt you on that one. I got a phone call the other day here at the store.
Yeah.
From a Swiftie asking if there was a Taylor Swift release in Record Store Day Black Friday.
Okay.
Well, I had to say no, sorry, there isn't.
Right. Well, you should have said yes, bring them in, maybe sell them to some. Get them started on Rush.
There we go, because Taylor Swift and Rush, they're very similar if you think about it.
Very much so.
No, not at all. Holy cow. But Dolly is kind of similar with what she did this last. We'll talk about that here in a bit. But so we'll gauge what's coming up with Record Store Day, Black Friday, and I think the next time we talk in a week, we can kind of do a little retrospective on how things went and see if you caved and ended up picking some stuff up.
Yes, I'm pretty sure I will.
I know you're still in mourning with that Pauly Shore release.
Yeah.
So just not there.
Yep.
Well, speaking of picking stuff up, as we do every week, vinyl community folks love showing off their acquisitions.
We do, and we like to show them so you could see them.
I know,
except
but
on this podcast.
Well, and then we'd like to hear them too, like you do on your Sunday show. But the copyright police be darned. They're not going to let us do that without getting too much away. But did you get a couple of goodies this week?
I finally got in the Third Man Records vault package of Syd Barrett, the box set.
I saw you post that.
Oh, my God, I've been anticipating this. And I'm telling you, the price is already skyrocketing on it. It's like double the price. It's incredible. But had Madcap Laughs, Barrett, and then, was it Opal?
Opal.
Yeah, Opal. And back in the 80s, I found some Syd Barrett. It was really cheap then. I was like, oh, Syd Barrett, he's kind of nuts. And I listened to it. It's not Pink Floyd. This is kind of weird. It's like the guy's crazy or something. And I never really got into it. But then lately, I would say the past few years, suddenly I've re-listened to it. And it's been, I've really, really enjoyed it.
It's one of those ones that you get a different sort of appreciation for the second, third, fourth time around.
I agree. Yes. And maybe the older you get, the more you relate. I don't know.
As your brain ages a little bit more, you can identify with Syd in his youth.
I think so. So that was exciting to get. Last week I picked up, never had this before, the first Black Sabbath album. I bought it here, Radio Wasteland. That's the album that's always kind of scared me because I just thought I'm going to go to hell if I own it. And I still may. I don't know. I'll let you know. I'll get a Ouija board when I die and find out where I'm at.
Is it really going to be the fault of that album, though?
Well, yes, I will blame it. No doubt about it. Use the Ouija board.
There we go.
I brought in Primal Scream, Screamadelica. I used to have that in CD. It's like one of those classic 90s when you think of trip hop and everything going on. So pretty excited to have that. And then, believe it or not, I bought from you last week the Best of Jethro Tull.
Yeah, you did. Yep.
It didn't have the poster. I went online and bought a second one with the raised so I could get the poster. So, yes, in 1 week I bought two Best of Jethro Tull, just to get the complete
that's
thing.
That's M-U, Moo?
Uh-huh.
Okay.
Yeah, so your copy, the cover is by far better. It's a really nice, beautiful copy. But the other one had the insert in the inner sleeve, and so we'll mash them together. And when you put the prices together, I paid too much for a very inexpensive album.
It's like a $3 or $4 record normally.
Yes, but I remember that poster. It was up
Yep.
on my wall.
Yep.
And, I mean, I stared and looked at that. So that was nostalgia.
Well, speaking of nostalgia,
Yes.
I picked up one from not my youth, but my childhood.
Oh, my.
And it's one of those things that you would just kind of maybe blow by. It seriously sits in the dollar bin, and usually when you see them, they're beat to hell. And I've seen them a few times before, but sometime this week when this came through, it raised a little ting in my head. I thought, I really kind of missed that. When I was a kid, we're talking mid-70s, so I must have been 10, 11 years old. Mm-hmm. I picked up a K-Tel Goofy Greats. I remember this as a kid, playing the heck out of this on a little suitcase turntable.
Yeah.
And it's one of those novelty records from K-Tel, and K-Tel was really cool with that stuff. But we're talking stuff like the Royal Guardsmen and with their Snoopy song on here. Favorite for some reason was the Mule Skinner Blues from Fenderman, Bobby Day. The somewhat inappropriate ones today with Mr. Custer, if you remember those. But These are just fun. They weren't meant to be kids' songs, but for whatever reason in the 60s and early 70s, they became novelty hits.
Yeah.
So the Green Tambourine, Ohio Express doing Chewy Chewy, that kind of stuff. And that just reminded me of being a kid. And I thought, you know what? This will never sell, in the dollar room or whatever. It'll just sit. So I'm going to hold on to that and just call it good.
I remember those from the 60s on the radio. They would be all over. And, and especially the Snoopy and the Red Baron was an absolute, memorized that song.
Yep.
Maybe on another episode, I'll sing it for everyone. But
not today.
Yes.
Huh? My other pickups were more interesting. From time to time here at the store, I will get a shipment of, let's say, unofficial releases.
Yeah.
Some folks call them bootlegs, but there's a supplier that I work with who imports these things from Europe, and we get a box, a couple times a year. I'll get some of these, especially around the record store day, just to have them. And that's you mentioned a discussion for another time. I guess that's one there is the ethics of buying and selling bootleg records or unofficial records. But I'm a sucker for Pink Floyd bootlegs, and so I picked up a couple. These are new pressings, and I really tried to do some research, but I got a copy of Pink Floyd Animals, the definitive alternative version, and Pink Floyd Wish You Were Here, the definitive alternative version. Now, I saw the descriptions on those, and I thought, okay, I'm going to take a chance. I tried to do some research before buying. Couldn't find much, but what it turns out that these are demo sessions from each of these albums. Huh. And we've talked before about how they'll throw those in as extras on big box sets, and sometimes they're not worth it. And I was very, very, very skeptical about these, again, coming from the sources that they come from. But I'll be darned if they're not, they sound good. Mm-hmm. And it's very interesting to hear each of these albums in its entirety in the working session. I mean, it's not quite there. The vocals aren't polished. There's a guitar riff in the middle of Dogs that was never there that they obviously chose not to include. So it's an interesting exploration for those of you like me who like to delve into some of the oddities with Pink Floyd. I'll let you borrow a couple of these, but these are really, really neat. Now, again, it's visual in this case. I'm showing Steve, and it doesn't do good for the podcasters. The bootleggers tried their best to emulate the Pink Floyd style of artwork on the covers. They didn't quite get it, I don't think. Animals is a little bit closer, but no, they're interesting. The sound quality on them is actually really good, and it's from the recording sessions in '75. It looks like this one came from a quadraphonic mix that was mixed down. This one from '76 on there too. So I'm actually very happy I nabbed these. It's really kind of an interesting study, as I said, in the development process of two Pink Floyd albums that are among my very favorites.
That's fascinating. Wow. Well, wait a second. Aren't you forgetting something?
What?
The big one.
The thing I texted to you the other day in confidence. The producer's here, so I have to be kind of careful in the background. Yeah, the big acquisition of which you speak is probably, and I'm saying probably, not going to go in the personal collection. It was a store purchase, but I don't think that I have ever seen a larger ticket item come through the door here at the store.
Yeah. That's amazing.
It's I don't want to tease it because you know how I'd like to do my little marketing things coming up. Mm-hmm. We're doing a big vinyl drop on Small Business Saturday, the day after Black Friday, and I'm going to include this thing in there. So, is it safe to say that you're probably not going to go for it at that price range?
I would have to go to the bank and get a loan, but it is incredible, and for serious collectors, it is amazing.
We'll talk about it next week.
Yeah.
In depth, but it's let's just call it 90s rarity. It's metal. Is it metal? It's metal.
Yeah, maybe new metal,
okay.
I guess. Yeah.
And Discogs clocks it in the 4-digit range, which I'm not going there. Yeah. I'm not going to go there with this one, but holy cow. Okay, enough teasing. People are going, what the hell are you talking about? Show me what that is. So you don't want to buy that?
I would love to buy it, but let's just say I got Christmas coming up.
A lot of folks do. This would be a Christmas bonus and the tax season rebate.
Yes.
Okay, onward to the subject at hand. I don't think before we get there, do we need to complain about Discogs for anything?
I think I'm okay with Discogs this week. I did get in a couple things from them. They came quick and one guy was taking a while. I wrote him a nice note after 2 weeks, and he apologized. It was very nice, sending it right out right away. But no gripes. Discogs, you're fine. You can advertise with us now.
There we go. The only complaint I have is that they had a little bit of web issues, and I know they advertised a job for what they call it, a web reliability supervisor or something or a website. It crashes, but that happens to a lot of websites. It's just, I go to look something up for someone and it's not there. And I'm like, well, Discogs is down. Sorry. Can't tell you what's going on. But no, good on this side too. And I might be coming around, especially if this big ticket item doesn't go in the store. I may have to go to Discogs to move it along, but we'll see.
They would like that because that would be a nice fee.
It would be. They'd be very happy to have that one.
Yes.
So this past week also, there was a big release from Dolly Parton. Did you listen to any of these cuts online?
I actually have not. No.
I listened to a couple here and there. A lot of excitement about this. This is an album that Dolly released called Rockstar, which featured collaborations all over the map. So, for example, you've got everybody from Richie Sambora on here, Sting, Steve Perry from Journey, Ann Wilson, John Fogerty, Kid Rock, Steven Tyler, Peter Frampton, Miley Cyrus, it just goes on and on. Elton John, and even Paul McCartney and Ringo Starr. So this is literally a who's who of rock and roll, helping Dolly transform into the rock star. After she won that award, she said, well, I might as well do a rock album. But it's interesting because a lot of these artists came in to re-record some of these vocals. They didn't just use old ones. Now, I know how the studio work. I doubt that they're in the studio with Dolly at the same time. They were kind of assembling these things piecemeal here and there, but still they came out to support and help her create this very, very hefty album. It's a 4 LP set.
Man.
And she took a page out of Taylor Swift's handbook and did a couple of different cover variations and vinyl color variations as well. I think there's even a Target exclusive, for crying out loud. So,
wow.
But this really kind of brings to mind the subject matter at hand. Dolly is how old now?
She is 77, I believe, and her first single came out in 1959.
Wow. And she's still releasing music. So Steve and I got talking because, well, this past week, you and I, along with our friend Pat, and Kim was going to go with us too, were slated to go see Buddy Guy perform in Saginaw.
Yeah.
And what was it, a week or two before that, it got canceled because Buddy fell ill.
Yes.
He's 87. And this is being billed as his farewell tour. Last time you get a chance to see a blues legend like him perform.
And he has been, it is a humongous tour for a guy that age. He has been, it's been nonstop and it's been going all year long. And then just when he's about to come to Saginaw, Michigan, he gets sick.
Yep.
Wow.
And they offered us a refund, or they said we can just reschedule this for, August of 24.
Yes, August of 24.
No offense to Buddy Guy, but...
That's a chance because, your refund, you got 30 days. After that, if you don't come, we're sorry, folks. You're out.
Now, this is kind of a continuation. Remember the subject we did a few weeks back about stars with fantastic longevity, folks that were still performing, still releasing songs after all these years. We kind of tagged that in with the Rolling Stones.
I'm the guy that couldn't remember about at the beginning, so yeah, who knows?
This, I kind of want to approach a little bit different because the Stones, okay, they're in their upper 70s, but we're talking about folks from that mid-70 range to Buddy Guy's age up to 87. And you said, who's the record holder for the oldest person to release an album?
Tony Bennett has the Guinness Book of World Records at age 95 on putting out, being the oldest person to ever put out a record album that he did with Lady Gaga.
That was just one a couple of years ago.
Yes, it was.
That's the other thing, I think, that as we're talking about these artists who not only age, but go into old age and still attempt to maintain their career as a performer, they, I think, in a lot of cases, and this is evidenced by Tony Bennett and Lady Gaga, Dolly with this record, and you could pretty much name any other big artist like Elton John, bringing in collaborators, folks to help out with songs. They're teaming up with old friends, so to speak, to re-record a lot of these old staples and classics. And I don't know what the exact reasoning would be behind something like that, maybe trying to appeal to a larger or younger audience in some case. Maybe they're just trying to pay back some old friends. But a part of me thinks, well, maybe they're just not quite there vocally or instrumentally capable anymore to do it themselves. And so they have to rely on somebody. I don't mean to be mean about that, but you can't help but wonder.
It is a rarity. The Rolling Stones, I'll give them props. They wrote their material for that, and so they really did a new album. I think Ian Anderson, his new Jethro Tull one, was pretty much new material. Yep. But for the most part, all of these, including the Tony Bennett one, it is reworking of other people's songs, or again the guest collaborators. And I think oftentimes too that it's just to appeal to more people. A Dolly Parton album, okay, I wouldn't buy it, but maybe there's some people on there, oh man, I really like this artist. Suddenly, I kind of want to hear it and see what they do or how they help her reinterpret a song.
Well, in that case, you've got on the Dolly album, Stairway to Heaven, performed by Dolly and Lizzo, reaching out to a completely different audience at that point.
And Lizzo has a huge fan base out there. Did Taylor Swift?
No Taylor Swift on here. Sorry about that.
Well, missed out on that one.
Now, one of the things, and Kim had mentioned she saw an article on this as well, that Bob Seger was actually supposed to appear on this album with Dolly singing Night Moves. But she said that according to the article, they couldn't get their vocal keys to match enough to make it work. Now, we talked about a couple weeks ago about AI kind of correcting these. That would have been cheating, I think. With two big stars, you can tell that's not Bob Seger because they've adjusted, or that's not Dolly. So they brought in Chris Stapleton to sing Night Moves instead of Bob Seger. But with regards to seeing these legends perform, now we went and saw Bob Seger. It had to be 2019. It was pre-pandemic down at Pine Knob, one of his last shows in Michigan. He was going on his farewell tour. I'd never seen Seger perform. All the time living here in Michigan, I don't know as if I ever really had much of a chance, but this time we took an opportunity that here's some tickets. Would you like to go see Seger perform one last time in Michigan? And while the experience of seeing that, and this is again still, we're talking several years ago now, he couldn't get there vocally with a lot of his stuff. He spent the majority of the concert sitting. Now, I'm not going to argue that he hasn't earned that right to sit down and play guitar and sing a song, but I don't know where to go emotionally on this. And that's kind of the push of where I'd like to go with the discussion today is, at what point are we feeding into these stars who want to keep doing this, but at the same time feeling a level of disappointment because they're not the way that we remember them?
I have a difficult time going to those concerts. It is because I have a memory of their music. Now, I have not gone to a lot of concerts in my life, but I've had opportunity on some of these older stars. Even my wife says, "Did you want to go to this?" I go, "Man," even like Styx. I go, "God, are they really going to be the same? Is this going to be what I remember?" There is the nostalgia factor out there, and so we can go and they're going to sing those songs or hits. But, in my mind, I have those songs a certain way. And as you get older, you tend to kind of quiet them down, do them differently, and it's not the same. The other thing, there's history. You saw Bob Seger. That's historic. We wanted to go see Buddy Guy. Why do we want to see Buddy Guy? It wasn't like he had new music out. It's historic. Here's a last chance to see this living legend. And that, I think for some of these artists, it's why, a big part of it. And for the artists, you spend your whole life having people applaud you, cheer for you. What keeps you young? What keeps you going? I think for a lot of them, part of their longevity is feeding off an audience, feeling important, feeling the love. Because if they're not there, if they're just at home, that's not the lifestyle they're used to.
It's a tricky discussion to have because at some point you look and say, should you still be doing this? But at the same time, you want to say, please give me more. I want to remember you. I want to experience you one more time. We've talked about the emotional attachment to music and albums several times on here. And I think that plays a big part in wanting to see some of these artists go for absolutely as long as they can. But then when you see them, you're like,
I recently had, there was a video, a gal which I know fairly well. She talked about going to see the Zombies. Mm-hmm. And, her husband's going, oh, really? These guys, they're really old. And also they saw Bob Dylan. They enjoyed both concerts. But, the Zombies, think how long they've been around. But Rod Argent's still doing it. There's 2 original members still in there. But for them, they came back and they were excited about it. They thought, oh, God, Argent, his voice is still great. It sounded good. Dylan, the husband said, kind of sounded old. Yeah. You could tell age was creeping in. His voice always was. I don't know how you tell. It's Bob Dylan.
Kick in there. He's a little gravelly.
Exactly. But it was, they enjoyed it. But myself, the Zombies were coming. I have that, Odyssey and Oracle, great, a classic album. I'd have a hard time wanting to go see it.
This is something that also hit home to me, and we've talked before, and we kid back and forth about Rush, and especially Geddy Lee's voice, with you saying, well, I can't quite stand that. But the last time I saw Rush was on their Farewell R40 tour when it came to Michigan. I saw them down in the Detroit area on that, their last hurrah. Now, throughout my lifetime, I'm trying to remember the count, it's maybe 12 times. I know there's people that have seen them hundreds, so I've not been there, but I've seen Rush all the way from the early 80s through that last tour in R40. And quite frankly, toward the end, they were still creating music. That last album, Clockwork Angels, is a good album, and the vocals on it are great, but it's written differently to kind of accommodate the inability of Geddy to reach those levels of his voice and his vocal work anymore. So to see him on that R40 tour, as cool as it was and as historic as it was, and important for me, both my kids were with me at the same time too, to see these guys one last time, knowing they're not going to do any further, at some level, to hear Geddy try to hit some of those notes for the early stuff, where his voice was through the roof, the kind that makes you kind of fingernails on a chalkboard, he just couldn't do it, and that took away a lot of those songs that had such a special memory for me.
To you, but maybe not to your children who weren't as familiar with that. Yeah. And so you have this new, batch of, people hearing this and maybe enjoying it. I think, especially, when they put out new albums and, like the Rolling Stones, there's the Beatles ones, there's the super fans.
Yep.
And they're going to want Dolly Parton. Has definitely a huge batch of super fans who are going to want that 4-album set. They're going to buy it. There's the completists. They have to have it. Doesn't matter if it's good or not. I have to have this in the collection. And then there's obviously those that have curiosity. What's it like? And they're the ones also that go to some of these concerts just to kind of see, well, how do they sound?
Now, are there any artists that you can think of that we're being very, I think, complimentary to some of these folks because of the love toward them? But I've got somebody in mind who at one point had a lot of admiration, love for, but now I'm kind of like, what in the hell? Please just shut up. And I'm talking about Roger Waters.
Yeah, yes.
outside of the music side of things, he's having some difficulty keeping his "Get Off My Lawn" trap shut with regards to current events. We'll go there on that. But
he's just a crotchety old man.
He is, but so is Van Morrison, but on different ends of the spectrum.
Yeah.
Roger Waters released that scaled back version of Dark Side of the Moon about a month or so back. He beat the reissue of the Pink Floyd 50th anniversary by a week, and he did these lockdown sessions for this Dark Side of the Moon version that he did, and they were horrible. I had a couple people that bought the album. For one, he turned it into a double LP, stretched some stuff out, but he didn't fill the double LP. He left side 4 blank. One of our customers, after buying it, came back and said it was not good. His voice was old. It was tired. He didn't sound like he was into it. They left the 4th side blank. She said, quite frankly, that was the best side of the entire album. What's that blank 4th side? So, but with Roger Waters, it's almost going to be an ego thing. But beyond that, it's an anger thing because he's still fighting whatever demons he's fighting against either his brain or Gilmore.
Yeah, it's instead of just, it's over. Let's just get back together. Maybe we can put out a new album. We can get a bunch of guest stars come in.
There we go.
Maybe bring in Dolly.
Singing Dolly from Run Like Hell or something like that.
Yes.
Great gig in the sky for Roger. Is there anybody else that you think probably should have hung it up?
Well, man, you kind of look back at some of these people that, are put out albums, been around for a long time. The Sparks recently put out an album. Yeah. They've been around since 1966. I didn't know. They weren't doing well. Until England really liked them. Petula Clark. Think about this. She's 89. In 2017 and 2018, she put out new music. Frankie Valli in 2021, he was 87 years old. He put out a new album. Dion, 2020, 2021, put out new material. His last one was a blues album that went to number 1.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
And so I guess, they can make some of this music now. For Dion, blues is something different. So he went to a different genre, but he did it in such a way, and maybe he had a bunch of guest artists. I don't know.
There were a few on that.
There was. So it kind of, gave him, new life into something. So I guess if you take some music and you try to, you can change it, to fit yourself. You think Van Morrison, look at all the, he just, every year he puts out a new album.
A skiffle album a year or two ago. Now he's going back to like roots rock. He's got, it either just came out or coming out in a week or two here, where he's visiting some older rock standards. I'm talking like, Buddy Holly-ish era and a lot of the Brit pop stuff from the early 60s.
So maybe as far as creatively with lyrically, when you look at that, he's kind of nothing's happening, but there's all this other music, his influences, things that he likes. So here's a chance I can still put out music. Will I buy any of it? I like Van Morrison, but I'm stuck in the 70s.
Yep.
About 1989, Avalon Sunset was the last. Now, and on CDs, I had a ton of his newer stuff. But, even when I think of with the new Rolling Stone, so you buy the new Rolling Stone, Hackney Diamonds. I have not bought it. But later next year, when you go to your collection, you want to listen to the Rolling Stones. Are you going to pull out Let It Bleed, or are you going to pull out Hackney Diamonds? Which one is going to mean the most to you? How often do you pull it? I kind of look at that with Van Morrison. I buy a new Van Morrison. Hey, that's not bad. But when I go back home, I'll probably pull out St. Dominic's Preview.
Much more of an emotional attachment to the ones that have been in your life that much longer.
That's a very good point, a very valid point. That's part of our growing up. Those were there. They were on the radio, and we've listened to them for many, many years. And so the newer stuff, okay, hey, this is good. Hackney Diamonds has gotten a lot of praise. A lot of people love it. It did not connect with me. If I bought it, I would listen to it, but I would put it away, and I would pull out the Stone stuff. Some girls, by far, I would be playing that still.
Now, I called up a little Google search on some of the artists who are still active, and I can't believe we haven't mentioned Willie yet.
Yeah,
he's got along with Billy Strings, a Record Store Day Black Friday release coming out from. It was a recording from his 90th birthday celebration where he sung with Billy Strings. But even then, did you get to see any video clips of that birthday celebration from a few months back?
I have not. I can't say I've ever watched a video clip of Willie Nelson.
Well, it was neat to a point to see him up there with all of these other stars celebrating his life.
Yeah.
But again, he sat down for a lot of it. He's 90. He's 90, so he has earned that right to do so.
Loretta Lynn, at age 90, put out an album, 2021. I mean, she passed away shortly after that, but it came out with great fanfare. And, folks were saying this is really good. You're going to say that a lot of times. I mean, she's 90. What are you going to say? Wow, she just sounds old and doesn't sound good. This is awful. I mean, you don't do that to someone.
They earn the respect there, too.
They did. They earn respect.
My list, for some reason, includes Yoko Ono as an artist in her 90s as well. Frankie Valli, Brian Wilson, Jerry Lee Lewis. These are folks that are in their upper 80s and 90s. Bobby Rush, 90 years old, still going. You mentioned Bob Dylan. Buddy Guy is on this list. Ringo is there. Tony Bennett you mentioned as well. Steve Lawrence and Chubby Checker also on this list.
Yeah, they are.
Performing still.
Beach Boys.
Yeah, that's the Brian Wilson.
Yep. Oh, yeah, the Brian Wilson. Yep. The Who, do they still get out there?
They do. The Who is basically just Townsend and Daltrey now, along with their studio musicians. But Pete is 78 years old, and Roger Daltrey is 79. Yeah. So they're creeping there, but they still do. Now, I found an album that's coming next week. We'll get a couple for the store. It was released about a year ago where the Who is performing with the London Symphony Orchestra. That's another different type of collaborative effort that we're seeing a lot more of lately, where you talk about toning down the songs. Here are the Who. I mean, we're talking just absolute energy in the 60s and 70s, Pete's Windmill and Keith Moon bashing the hell out of his drums. Here they are with the London Symphony Orchestra performing their great hits. Won't Get Fooled Again. That's my radio voice.
Yes, very nice. One of my all-time favorite Metallica albums is when they perform with the San Francisco Orchestra, but it is so good. But then I like orchestra, and for me that was a big thing. So Did you mention Paul McCartney on there? You did.
I did. Well, we talked about him earlier, but he is on that list with Ringo as well.
And he recently had that album, his last album, which there's a website that went on that was giving away free albums. You just had to pay for shipping, believe it or not. Now the shipping was $7, but the albums were free. The new Paul McCartney album was on there.
Really?
A couple different versions of it.
Oh my!
For free. I did not buy it for free.
Yeah, no.
No, I just didn't need it because I have space limitations and I'm not going to listen to it.
It would be just a thing that you would have and take up space.
It wouldn't matter.
Side note on the McCartney, and this is just an observation. I don't want to get people all worked up. But when we talked about the AI working with John Lennon's voice a few weeks back, the video that accompanied that was all over the internet, the little mini documentary that talked about how it was made, did you notice that, you didn't see anybody's faces when they were talking in the interviews. It was all the voices. And Paul McCartney sounded not good, and just the voice. And I almost this is the old TV guy in me, thinking that they didn't show their faces for some of these reasons. I
would agree. Yes.
I mean, health-wise, some of them aren't doing so good. These guys aren't going to be around forever.
They're not. And there goes the whole, I want to see them before they pass, Kiss. I want to see them. Of course, they've been around since 73, so I mean they are way up in age too. I mean, it's these legacy acts. It does give fans a chance to finally see them. You just hope that they're not disappointed. If they're a big fan, you know what? Maybe it's super exciting.
Somebody else too that we've talked about from time to time and is having some health issues is Ozzy Osbourne.
Yeah.
74 years old. I just happened to catch and I'm not going to mention the website. It's a tabloid post because I think it's kind of not cool to follow these stars around just to make sure you get a picture of Ozzy in a wheelchair. But that's what they did. They got a shot of Ozzy leaving a hospital in a wheelchair after saying he's done with his reconstructive surgeries. He's having problems with his back and pins in his neck and battling Parkinson's at the same time. So let's make sure we get a shot of Ozzy,
it's not right.
in a wheelchair. But again, they had to cancel some Ozzy stuff. Now I remember it was was it one of the Super Bowls or something a few years back? They had a performance from Ozzy, and I'm using air quotes, performance, where they lifted him up out of the stage, and he stood there lip syncing for a little bit to a Black Sabbath song or an Ozzy song, and he went back down. Obviously, he was just kind of mounted in place, and they brought him up so he didn't have to run onto the field and run back off. And while it's cool to see him out there and doing stuff like that, that's, again, I get back to this. I cannot escape that part of me that feels kind of sad that they're doing it at that age.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Sometimes we don't know when to quit.
Yeah.
There is just a time where you have to say, let's not. But if people show up, if the fans come in, and they're giving you adoration, it's hard not to like that.
There's another, and I don't know if I should go down this road. Should I go down this road or not?
Oh, go ahead. I'm sure it's a great road.
We talk about aging gracefully. I mean, it happens. Inevitably, we're all getting older. You are, I am. It's going to happen to all of us. I think there's a difference between aging gracefully and if you've got that, the ego, the need to be out there and you're fighting it. Dolly has had some work done to her face.
Some. That's very
generous.
Cher
has. If you look at that, she's still trying to perform. But the worst, I think, example of this has got to be Madonna. And she's not even in that upper age bracket yet. But she has just totally taken. And I've never been a fan of Madonna's music. I can respect who she is and what she's done for the music industry. And that I have no problems with. But now it's almost to the point of it looks satirical in what she's done plastic surgery-wise, even though they're saying, oh, she hasn't. It's like, come on, seriously?
Yeah, exactly. It's way too smooth.
Yeah.
One of my issues a lot of times, especially as these legacy groups and artists put out a new album, is there's a lot of great new bands. And so as a record store owner, a Hackney Diamonds is great. It sells. It moves out. But when I look at, we only have so much money, we have this limited amount of resources, is I like to try to put my money into new artists to support them. There was a thing in the Atlantic Journal, and they just talked about, this is just streaming, and they said that almost 70% of all streaming is older music. And that has increased by 20%. New music, brand new music, it's actually decreasing and people aren't streaming as much. Now, some could say, well, maybe that's because the new music sucks. Well, okay. I mean, yeah, you can go down that road, but it doesn't. I was looking at this year, the albums that I've bought, the brand new albums for this year. The oldest one I had was from Witch. And they were Zamrock back in the 70s. I almost didn't buy it because the guy's really old. And I thought, is that going to be any good? But it wasn't bad. But I will pull out a Zamrock album from the 70s first. But everything else, there was a couple like Guided by Voices, was an older one, Slow Dive. It was new artists. That's where I find it's exciting on this new music's coming out. I don't fault anybody for getting excited about a Beatles Red and Blue. That's what you like, that's great, or Hackney Diamonds. I just see that there's great music being produced that oftentimes we overlook as we go for a bunch of these legacy groups, and they get forgotten about. And so even as I'm looking at what are my favorite albums from 2023, it's a video coming up, but in a few months, it's this new stuff. There is so many great new groups out there making fantastic music.
And they're all kind of jockeying for that position, not only the person's time to listen, shelf space if you're going physical, and quite frankly, the pocketbook, whether you can afford to get all of this stuff. Do I want to get this stuff that I've heard and I've got the emotional attachment to? But you're saying it doesn't hurt to explore. And we all had to explore new stuff at one point. That's how I discovered Rush. That's how I discovered Pink Floyd. At some point in my life, that was new to me.
And we're never too old to explore.
No.
And it's easier to explore now. You have the world of YouTube. I mean, I watch videos where I watch certain people that show only new albums. That helps me. Of course, streaming. There's a billion ways to explore. If you don't want to, okay. But there is great stuff being produced. And so I tend to stay away from when these older artists that I do admire and I totally respect, but I know I'm not going to listen to that as much as something brand new that's coming out from a new group that's trying to make it big.
That catches you especially.
Yes, that excites you, that gets you, wow, this is great. And that's the beauty of music. It's the excitement and the passion that you get when you hear something. And when a new group can do that, this is great. I can't wait for their next album. And it brings back why we do this.
Mm-hmm. So you're not too old to rock and roll, is what you're saying.
Not too old to rock and roll. It's just I use a rocking chair a lot more often when I'm rocking.
Well, if they can sit down while they're playing, you can certainly sit down while you're listening.
Yes.
Right? You don't need to get up and dance.
Uh-huh.
At the end of the day, as we said, these folks are getting older, and it almost feels like a shock from time to time when you hear that this artist passed or this artist is no longer going. But it's inevitable. It's going to happen. But seriously, these folks are artists. They're entertainers. They have become a part of our lives. They're important to us. But at the end of the day, they're going to get old too. Just they're a person like the rest of us.
Keith Richards is not going to die.
He's the exception.
Yes, he's like embalmed or something.
There we go. The other thing too is like we could probably just say at least these guys aren't doing something like running a country or something like that. Where
yeah.
All right, we're gonna leave it right there. Their finger on the button or something there. Ian Anderson, by the way, how old is he?
I don't know how old he is. It's been but he started making music in the 60s.
76 years old.
76,
and
that's
he
it.
is not too young to die, apparently, either.
He is not, no.
All right. Well, you folks have been listening to two guys talking about records, two older guys talking about records, the Vinyl Community Podcast. We hope you all have a great week. Enjoy Thanksgiving, if you're in the U.S., that is.
And have a happy record store day.
Oh, yeah, I didn't forget about that. That's going to be taking up all of my time for the next few days here.
Yes, it will.
All right, Steve, thanks again.
Thanks, Jim.
You folks have a great week.
Bye.